This plow blade was forged in 1887. It has worked Lancaster County soil every single season since then. No replacement parts, no commercial rust treatment, no trip to the hardware store. The family that owns it has never once paid a rust-proofing bill in their lives. And the iron on that blade is still solid, still true, still sharp enough to cut through Pennsylvania clay like the day it was made. Here's what I want you to think about for a second. The Amish community in Holmes County, Ohio, has been farming the same land with the same tools since the early 1800s. Their blacksmiths still forge iron on hand bellows forges. Their farmers still use iron-bladed plows, iron hinges on every barn door, iron-headed hatchets and draw knives that are older than anyone alive. Now, ask yourself, why does every piece of iron equipment in a modern American barn get replaced every decade, while Amish iron from the 1880s is still working fields today? What you're about to learn is the exact system the Amish have used for over 2 centuries to keep every iron tool on their farms alive indefinitely. Not patched up, not slowed down, alive. And the core of that system costs about $3 at any grocery store in America. Stay until the end, because the final piece of this is something no homesteading guide has ever clearly written down. And it's the piece that actually makes the whole system work. Here's the thing, nobody tells you about rust on iron tools. Rust is not the end of the metal. Rust is a transformation of the surface. Iron oxide, which is what rust actually is, still contains the iron. The molecules have changed partners, bonded with oxygen instead of staying pure. But the iron itself hasn't gone anywhere. The reason conventional rust treatment fails over and over is that it treats rust as something to be removed. Sand it off, grind it down, wire brush it back to bare metal, then coat with paint or oil, and wait for the cycle to start again. Any Amish blacksmith in Lancaster County will tell you, that approach is fighting the wrong enemy. You are not supposed to remove the rust. You are supposed to change what the rust is. The chemistry behind that idea was formally documented in 1813 by French chemist Henri Braconnot, who isolated tannic acid as a pure compound. What he put into laboratory language, leather tanners and blacksmiths had already been observing for centuries. Here's what actually happens at the molecular level. When tannic acid contacts iron oxide, a chemical reaction occurs. The tannic acid molecules bind to the iron ions inside the rust and convert them into a new compound called ferric tannate. Ferric tannate is dark blue-black in color, completely insoluble in water, and chemically bonded to the steel surface at the molecular level. It does not sit on top of the rust and eventually peel away. It transforms the rust itself into the protective barrier. The disease becomes the cure at the molecular level. The Canadian Conservation Institute still publishes this exact process as the standard procedure for treating corroded iron artifacts that museums intend to preserve for centuries. What the Smithsonian uses to keep 400-year-old iron farm tools intact, you can mix in a mason jar for $3. Tannic acid is not a laboratory chemical requiring a specialty supplier. It is a naturally occurring compound found in extraordinary concentrations in oak bark, chestnut wood, tea leaves, grape skins, and pomegranate rind. On an Amish farm in the 1800s, every one of those sources grew within walking distance of the barn. Oak trees were everywhere. Black tea was a staple household item that cost almost nothing. When a draw knife, an adze, or a plow blade began to show rust, the repair was as natural and obvious as the forest around the farmstead. Strong oak bark tea was brewed thick and dark, applied to the rusted surface with a rag, then sealed with beeswax or linseed oil from the flax crop. The iron was maintained not with chemistry purchased from a store, but with chemistry understood from the land. So, why didn't this knowledge make it into mainstream homesteading books? It has nothing to do with the knowledge being difficult or obscure. It has everything to do with what happened after 1945. After World War II, the American coatings industry had an economic problem. Companies had spent the entire war developing synthetic petroleum-based rust inhibitors and primers. They had built factories, supply chains, marketing departments, and retail distribution networks around products that cost 10 to 50 times more than tannic acid to produce. A naturally occurring powder that any person could brew from oak bark or buy in bulk for a few dollars, was not a product opportunity for that industry. It was a threat. So they did what industries always do when a cheap solution undermines an expensive one. They didn't ban tannic acid. They didn't argue against it. They simply stopped mentioning it. They filled hardware store shelves with branded alternatives and made sure nobody ever thought to look at the ingredient panel on the back of the bottle. Here's what that ingredient panel actually says. The commercial rust converter sold at every hardware store in America for $15 to $30. A bottle lists tannic acid as the primary active ingredient. Pull up the safety data sheet on any major brand, and there it is, right in the chemical composition section. The manufacturers take $3 worth of naturally occurring powder, dissolve it in petroleum solvents, pour it into a branded bottle, and sell it back to you at 10 to 15 times the actual cost of the active ingredient. The chemistry inside that bottle is functionally identical to what an Amish blacksmith was brewing from oak bark in 1880. The only difference is the label and the markup. Let me walk you through exactly what the Amish system looks like in practice, because the simplicity of it is almost insulting once you see it. Step 1. Get your tannic acid. You have two options depending on your budget and what you have available. Option A, food-grade tannic acid powder. Search online for food-grade tannic acid powder from any bulk supplement retailer. A 100-gram bag costs $3 to $5 and will treat approximately 40 square feet of rusted metal surface. That covers an entire set of garden tools, every iron hinge on a barn, and a full season of cast iron maintenance from a single bag. Option B, strong brewed black tea. This is what Amish households have used for generations. Steep 4 to 6 regular black tea bags in 2 cups of boiling water for 30 minutes until the liquid is dark and concentrated. Black tea contains between 3 and 11% tannic acid by dry weight. Not as concentrated as the pure powder, but entirely effective for surface rust on hand tools. And it costs almost nothing. Use option B for your first attempt. You likely already have the tea bags. Once you see how it works, you'll want to order the powder for heavier jobs. Step 2. Prep the surface the right way. Take a wire brush or coarse steel wool and knock off any loose, flaking material from the rusted surface. Do not sand down to bare, shiny metal. That step is actually wrong for this process. The tannic acid needs existing rust to react with. You are removing the material that is already detached and blocking contact, not the rust that is still bonded to the surface. Leave the bonded rust layer in place. That is your raw material. Step 3. Apply the solution. Apply the tannic acid solution evenly across the rusted area with a cheap foam brush, a cotton rag, or a folded piece of burlap. Within 10 to 15 minutes, watch the surface change color. Orange-brown rust shifts to dark gray, then deepens to blue-black. That visible color change is the molecular conversion happening in real time, ferric tannate forming on the surface of your steel. Let the treated surface air dry completely, 2 to 4 hours depending on temperature and humidity. Then apply a second coat following the same process. Multiple thin coats that fully cure between applications build a denser, more adherent layer than a single heavy coat. Step 4. Seal it. After the second coat cures, finish with a protective seal. For iron hand tools, axes, hatchets, draw knives, fixed blade knives, rub on melted beeswax or boiled linseed oil with a cloth while the metal is slightly warm. Beeswax fills every pore and creates a water barrier that is flexible, renewable, and entirely natural. Linseed oil polymerizes as it cures and creates a harder protective film. Both work. The Amish use both. For cast iron cookware, apply the solution to rust spots, let it convert and dry, then re-season the piece in a 350-degree oven as normal. The converted ferric tannate surface actually accepts seasoning oil better than bare cast iron does. One thing to set expectations correctly: the finished surface does not look like paint. It looks like the metal got darker, with a blue-black sheen in some areas and flat gray in others. People who expect it to look like a fresh coat of spray paint sometimes think it didn't work. It worked. That color is the ferric tannate. That is the protection. This is not cosmetic. It is chemistry. Here is the part that no gardening or homesteading guide has ever clearly written down. And it's the reason I asked you to stay until the end. The Amish do not think about rust as a maintenance problem the way most American homesteaders do. They think about it as a seasonal rhythm. Every autumn, before winter storage, every iron tool on the farm gets the same treatment. One afternoon, one person. Here is the exact sequence. A hot vinegar rinse to clean accumulated organic debris and surface contamination. A coat of tannic acid solution applied with a rag. 2 to 3 hours of drying near the wood stove. A final wipe of melted beeswax. The whole process for an entire barn's worth of iron tools takes one person one afternoon. Total material cost for that afternoon, under $5. The result is iron tools that never degrade beyond the point of recovery, never require replacement, and pass to the next generation in working condition. The modern homesteader replaces a set of garden tools every 5 to 8 years on average. An Amish farm maintains the same iron tools across generations, sometimes across more than a century. That is not because Amish iron is somehow different, or because Amish soil is gentler. It is because the Amish never adopted the commercial model that defined rust as a recurring problem requiring recurring purchases. They inherited a maintenance rhythm that treats iron like a living material to be tended, not a consumable to be discarded. Every set of iron tools you have ever thrown away, every shovel head with a rusted-through collar, every axe with a pitted blade, every cast iron pan abandoned to the trash because the rust looked too serious to deal with. None of it was past saving. It was past the point where conventional methods were worth the effort. With $3 of tannic acid and 45 minutes of your time, not one of those tools was beyond recovery. The rust-proofing industry spent 80 years making sure you believed otherwise. Not through any dramatic suppression or secret memo, but through something much quieter and much more effective. They simply filled every hardware store shelf and every automotive service menu with branded alternatives, made those alternatives seem technical, professional, and expensive, and let the old knowledge sit quietly until nobody remembered to reach for it. You remember now. That is the whole point of this video. Here is everything you need to get started this weekend. Food-grade tannic acid powder, 100-gram bag, $3 to $5 online, treats approximately 40 square feet of rusted surface. Or 6 regular black tea bags, already in your cabinet, free. Wire brush or coarse steel wool, approximately $3 at any hardware store. Cheap foam brush or cotton rags, approximately $1. Or use what you have, beeswax block or boiled linseed oil, approximately $5 to $8, hardware or craft store. White vinegar for the pre-rinse, already in your kitchen, free, total new spend, under $10. Treats tools you will pass on to your grandchildren. Start with one rusted tool you were about to throw away. Give it the full treatment. Once you see the color change happen in front of your eyes, you will never throw away a rusted tool again. If you're the kind of person who believes that real, practical knowledge gets quietly set aside when it threatens someone else's revenue, you already know what to do with what you just learned. You go find the rustiest tool in your garage. You brew the tea or mix the powder. You watch the iron change color in front of you, and you understand, for the first time, that the thing you were about to throw away was never broken. It was just waiting for someone who remembered how to fix it. Leave a comment below and tell me what tool you're going to treat first. Garden tool, cast iron pan, old axe, barn hinge. I want to know the specifics, because the specifics tell me what to dig for next. Subscribe, because what comes next in this series is the Amish composting method that produces finished soil in 6 weeks instead of 12 months. And the agricultural extension data from Penn State that explains exactly why the industrial gardening industry has never wanted you to know it works. The knowledge was never lost. It was just waiting for someone to remember where to look.